Yeah, Governor, you've been pushing for a straight cap on property taxes. Why did you choose that as opposed to a circuit breaker kind of system which gives some income-based relief? That's something a lot of legislators are talking about.
Yeah, it's a circuit breaker is a different purpose, legitimate purpose, but it's just different from a property tax cap all across the board. I believe the state needs a property tax cap. I believe it needs fiscal discipline for the local governments. I believe the rate of spending is out of control, not just in the state government in Albany, but also locally. And I believe that applies to all taxpayers, regardless of income. I believe the taxes are too high in New York. I believe we're chasing people from their homes all across the board.
Governor, Speaker Silver says that three-way talks on an ethics reform bill have begun. I wanted to know if you had an update on that and if that includes full disclosure for lawyer legislators.
You know my position on ethics reform. I put it out in the campaign. I put it in numerous books, for which I was roundly mocked. We have been talking about, there are discussions ongoing about the ethics bill with all the relevant parties. We don't have, do we have an agreement yet? No.
What's the pushback been like? I know obviously as a new administration, you would have liked to have come out with some quick agreements. Are you getting pushback that's surprising to you on various issues, whether it's property tax cap, ethics reform?
Pushback in Albany? No, Ken. I don't know why you would say such a thing. Pushback, no. Look, are many of my proposals dramatic proposals? Yes. And ethics, for example, is this dramatic reform? Yes. Much more dramatic than where they were last year? Yes. Is dramatic reform hard to accept and hard to pass? Yes. And we're working through it.
Why are so many things being done kind of behind closed doors, some might say in secret in your opening weeks? You're having people over to the mansion, those private meetings, the ethics things going on in private. Is that a strategy decision?
Yeah, if anything, I think it's just the opposite. I'm having receptions with the legislators. I think those are, I don't think they're private. We're bringing in both sides, Assembly, Senate, majority and minority. I don't know that we could be inviting anyone else in. So do I think it's appropriate for the governor to have a reception with the legislature? Yes. Do I think it's appropriate for the governor to speak to the legislature? Yes.
With the ethics bill, I mean, you're not putting out a bill and then having, public comment on it. And then
I don't think there was ever discussion or suggestion that you should have open staff meetings, right? These are staff-to-staff conversations that are happening on every level, on the Assembly and the Senate, majority, minority. And that's just the way the process works. Will there also be public discussions? Sure.
Governor, Mayor Bloomberg says he hopes to speak with you this week about what's going to be in your budget. What are you going to tell him will be in your budget for the city of New York?
We're going to reveal the budget when we reveal the budget, Fred, and that's going to be next week. I don't think there are any surprises in the budget. There are two main points that I have made all through the campaign. I'll continue to make. Number one, we have to change the way Albany functions or doesn't function, depending on your perspective. And that's a fundamental point that you're going to see in the budget also. We can't keep doing business the way we've been doing business, period. Second, we can't keep spending money the way we've been spending money. Both are reflected in the budget. The budget is not just going to be about the numbers. It's about the point in time. It's about where we are, and I believe this is a point in time where we're going to have to change fundamentally our behavior. But that will be all in the budget.
In terms of cuts to the city, though, are you going to give him any specific numbers, and can you share any now?
I'll be talking to the mayor. Obviously, we want to find ways to be of service to the city of New York, as well as upstate cities. These are tough times, Fred, for everyone, for the state's finances, for New York City's finances. And I think, if anything, it requires a higher level of cooperation than ever before. I have a very good relationship with Mayor Bloomberg, and I respect the mayor. We have a good relationship team to team. And anything we can do to be cooperative that is reasonable and makes sense from a statewide perspective, we'll do.
Governor, what about state worker layoffs? So is there any more details that you can offer at this time on that?
No, sir. We'll have it in the budget.
Do you have an accurate count of the state workforce now? Can you get where you need to get through attrition over the next year or two?
Well, there are two questions when you ask the question about layoffs. First question is, what number do you need in terms of savings, right? How do you balance the budget? What number do you need? Second question is, how do you achieve that number? And part of that is going to be dependent on the level of cooperation you have with the workforce and with the unions, and that's something that we'll have to work through.
Question, Governor, on property taxes. We're talking about circuit breakers, basically kind of a grant, taxpayers talking about property tax cap. In your mind, though, are property taxes even an inherently good way of financing the cost of public services at the local level? You could scrap the whole system and do it again, and you rely more on income taxes and not property taxes.
Look, if you could scrap the whole system, Nick, you'd do a lot of things different, right? That'd be fun, just to start with a blank sheet of paper. Look, the balance, if you could design a system, would you design a better way of raising revenue? Of course. Would you design a better way of distributing revenue? Yes. By the way, it wouldn't just be state, local. Start with the federal government, right? And possible redistribution from the federal government, then the state. But we are where we are, and we're going to try dramatic reform, but it also has to be realistic. We have the system we have. And on the property taxes, Nick, it's two things. It's number one, we spend too much money in this state. It is just an unsustainable rate of spending. This is not an editorial comment, and it's not a political comment. The rate of spending is unsustainable. That is a fact. You look at the rate of increase, you cannot sustain it, either on the state level or on the local level. Circuit breaker would say, well, you can't sustain it for some people. I say, no, you can't sustain it for any people. Any people. And that's why I am for an overall property tax cap as opposed to a circuit breaker. Also, I think it's a powerful statement for this state to make. Look, I like to talk, I was talking to the doctor about my federal experience, which was an eye-opening experience for me. Worked in literally every state in the nation. And it was very impactful for me on where I am today. We have a reputation as being an anti-business state, and we are the tax capital of the nation. Well, we're only second, we're really one. The reputation, the perception is you're anti-business, you're difficult, and your taxes are overly burdensome. That also happens to dovetail with a reality, and that's the problem. And that has to change. You want to change the economic trajectory of the state, that has to change. That fact has to change. Because we're going to struggle through this budget now, and we're going to find out how to close the gap, and we're going to make cuts, but ultimately, you have to grow your way out of this situation. You have to raise revenues. That's the real solution here. And you raise revenues by creating private sector jobs. And you create private sector jobs by attracting private sector companies to the state of New York. And that's the riddle that you have to solve. Well, how do we get businesses here if we're the highest tax state in the nation and they don't want to come? That's what you have to solve. And that's what we're trying to do. In the meantime, you have an immediate problem of closing the gap.
There's been some talk to keep Chris Ward or Jay Walder. There's a report that you're keeping.
I'm sorry, Ken?
There's a report that you've decided to keep Jay Walder and Chris Ward at their current positions, heading the MTA and the Port Authority.
Was that a Daily News report? It was accurate.
There's been some talk in Washington about possibly helping states find a way to declare bankruptcy or some sort of a default. Is that something you'd ever envision happening in New York?
I would never envision the state of New York going bankrupt.
What about municipalities? I guess this bill would also apply to a city like Buffalo that has huge unfunded pension mandates.
You have a vehicle in current law that gets to basically the same place, right? The financial control boards, Buffalo, for example, Nassau is now teetering. Financial control board is basically the vehicle that we have for an insolvent or bankrupt county, right? The financial control board comes in, can do restructurings, can abrogate contracts, can change terms of contracts. So we have that vehicle that achieves the fundamental purpose for local. States obviously can't declare bankruptcy. The concept of the restructurings in bankruptcy, obviously, would have some appeal. But states do have the ability themselves. You can raise revenue, you can cut expenses. So why you would really need the vehicle of bankruptcy, I'm not quite sure, but I know we don't need it in this state. I am confident that we are going to get through this. I'll put forth my budget proposal next week. I will send it to the legislature. I'm sure they will deal with it with expedition and dispatch and send it right back. And we are going to work through this. And I do believe that this is actually, in the long run, going to be an opportunity for the state. I believe it. When you look at the budget and you look at the things that we're talking about this state doing, there will be very few things that the people in this room won't say to themselves, I knew we should have done that long ago. I knew that we were spending too much money for a lot of years. I know we weren't getting enough performance for a lot of years. I think this is just a moment in time where we can actually do a lot of the work that needed to be done anyway. And maybe this crisis is actually going to bring the attention and the focus and the energy to do what government should have been doing for the good of the people of this state.